You wake up every day believing you are free. You choose what to wear, what to eat, what to say, who to text, what to post. But beneath that illusion, something far deeper is at play. What if your freedom is not real? What if the life you are living, your thoughts, your beliefs, even your desires aren't truly yours? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the quiet, invisible force Erich Fromm dedicated his life to exposing. And once you see it, once you understand it, you'll never look at yourself or the world the same way again.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Fromm didn't believe that freedom was simply the absence of chains. He believed that the greatest psychological trap is the one that disguises itself as liberation. He called it escape from freedom, a concept so subtle, so embedded in our modern lives, that we miss it entirely. We think we're choosing, but are we? We think we're expressing ourselves. But are we really just conforming to unseen pressures, expectations, and fears? You must ask yourself, if freedom is a choice, why do so few of us feel truly alive? This is the paradox. We say we want freedom, but when we are given it true freedom, we panic. We look for a master, a system, a rule to follow. We trade our autonomy for comfort, our individuality for belonging, our authenticity for approval. And we don't even realize we're doing it. Fromm saw this in the rise of fascism, in the psychology of mass culture, in the desperate need people have to belong even at the cost of their inner truth. And he warned us, the greatest danger to your freedom is not a dictator, it is your own fear of being free. We are afraid of freedom because it demands responsibility, not just for our actions, but for our identity, for our meaning, for our existence. The moment you realize that no one is coming to tell you who you are, what to do, or what to believe, that is the moment you stand face to face with the abyss. And most people run. They run to ideology. They run to consumerism. They run to relationships, to religion, to work, to drugs, to distractions. Not because these things are inherently bad, but because they offer structure in a world that terrifies us with its openness. Fromm writes, modern man lives under the illusion that he knows what he wants, while he actually wants what he is supposed to want. That sentence alone is enough to shatter the illusion of freedom. How much of your life is truly chosen? How many of your goals, your values, your dreams are yours, and how many were implanted by culture, family, media, or fear? This is the psychological trap that blocks your freedom, the belief that you are free, when in truth, you are bound by invisible chains made of expectation. And this trap is not new. It is ancient. It is primal. When we were children, we learned quickly. Approval equals safety. Rejection equals danger. We adapted. We changed. We hid parts of ourselves to be loved, to be accepted. And those patterns calcified into personality. But personality is not identity, it is armor. And if we never take it off, we never meet who we truly are. We simply become what the world wants us to be. So what does it mean to be truly free? Fromm argued that it is not the freedom from responsibility, but the freedom to become, to create, to love, to live with integrity. It is not a passive state, it is an active, courageous engagement with life. But that kind of freedom is terrifying, because it means standing alone. It means owning your choices. It means saying, I will not be what the world tells me to be. I will become what I choose, even if it costs me everything. This is where the journey gets dangerous. Because once you start questioning the trap, you begin to feel the weight of your own complicity. You begin to see how much of your life has been lived on autopilot. How often you have said yes when you wanted to say no. How many times you betrayed your truth to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be liked. And the realization is unbearable. You have been your own jailer. But don't look away. This is the turning point. Because that pain, that sharp, searing pain of awareness, is the beginning of real freedom. You cannot change what you refuse to see. And once you see the trap, you can begin to dismantle it. Not by force, but by attention, by asking, what am I avoiding? What am I conforming to? Where am I lying to myself? Fromm believed that freedom is not a destination, it is a practice, a way of living, a way of being. And it starts with the smallest choices. Do you speak your truth, even when it's uncomfortable? Do you create from your soul, even when it's not profitable? Do you walk away from what drains you, even when it's familiar? These are not dramatic acts, but they are revolutionary. Because every time you choose yourself, you weaken the trap. Every time you act from love instead of fear, you reclaim your soul. Every time you stop performing and start being, you become more real. And the more real you become, the less the world can control you. But here's the paradox. The more freedom you claim, the more responsibility you carry. You can no longer blame your parents, your culture, your boss, your partner. You can no longer hide behind excuses. You are no longer a victim, you are a creator. And that shift is terrifying because it strips away the comfort of blame. But it is also exhilarating because now you are no longer waiting for permission. You are living. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Fromm would add, "The unchosen life is not truly lived." So many of us are alive in body but asleep in spirit. We follow the path laid out for us, never stopping to ask, who chose this? Why am I doing this? What do I truly want? These are the questions that awaken the soul, but they also threaten the system, because a free individual is dangerous. A free individual cannot be manipulated by fear. A free individual does not consume blindly, does not obey blindly, does not live blindly. A free individual is a light in a world that thrives on darkness. And that's why the psychological trap exists, not as a conspiracy, but as a consequence of collective fear. We created the trap together, and we can dismantle it together. But it starts with you, with your breath, with your awareness, with your courage to look at the parts of yourself you've hidden, the parts that long to speak, to create, to love, to live. That is your liberation. Not in some distant future, but right now in this moment. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you were truly free? To understand the depth of the trap that blocks our freedom, we must look not outward, but inward. The world is full of systems and institutions that reinforce conformity, but the true enemy is not out there, it's within us. It's in the way we've been conditioned to think, to feel, to desire. Erich Fromm warned that modern society doesn't take our freedom by force, it seduces it away. It convinces us to trade freedom for comfort, truth for security, authenticity for approval. And we do it gladly, not realizing the price we're paying is our soul. Fromm saw that our greatest fear is not oppression, but aloneness. Freedom, in its truest form, often begins in solitude. It means breaking away from the herd. It means standing in the silence of the self and confronting the terrifying question, who am I without my roles, my labels, my identity shaped by others? Most of us never ask that question because we're afraid of what we'll find or what we won't. But until we ask it, we remain trapped in lives that look full but feel empty, trapped in relationships that look loving but feel suffocating, trapped in systems that reward obedience and punish originality. The psychological trap is subtle. It tells you that success means fitting in, that happiness means being liked, that peace means avoiding conflict. But what if that's a lie? What if the real path to freedom is the opposite of what you've been told? What if fitting in keeps you small? What if being liked keeps you fake? What if avoiding conflict keeps you silent? Fromm believed that the modern individual has been alienated from their true self, not by accident, but by design. Because a disconnected individual is easier to control. He wrote, "Man is the only animal for whom his own existence is a problem which he has to solve." And yet we rarely solve it. We distract ourselves instead. We turn to consumption, entertainment, status, distraction. We become addicted to images of ourselves on social media, in our resumes, in our curated identities. We chase validation like a drug, numbing the deeper ache within, the ache of disconnection from our essence. But real freedom begins when we stop running, when we stop performing, when we stop trying to be what the world wants and start becoming who we truly are. This is not a comfortable process. It's a death and a rebirth. It means letting go of everything you thought defined you. It means grieving the version of yourself that lived only to please others. It means walking into the unknown with nothing but your truth. And yet, in that terrifying space, something sacred emerges: choice, real choice. The ability to say yes because you mean it, not because you're afraid of rejection. The ability to say no without guilt. The ability to create, love, speak, act not from fear, but from freedom. This is what Fromm called the positive freedom, the freedom to be one's authentic self, to engage in spontaneous, meaningful action, to love without possession, and to think without manipulation. But to access that kind of freedom, we must confront a deeper truth. Most of us are addicted to control. We want certainty. We want predictability. We want guarantees. And freedom offers none of that. Freedom is chaos. Freedom is possibility. Freedom is risk. That's why we escape it. That's why we run to ideologies, to dogmas, to systems that promise us a fixed identity, a stable reality, a clear answer. But in doing so, we trade our aliveness for security. Fromm saw this pattern repeating throughout history. In every age, people have chosen comfort over truth. They followed leaders who told them what to think, what to believe, who to hate. And each time they believed they were free because they chose their master. But choosing your chains doesn't make you free. It just makes you complicit. So how do we break this cycle? How do we reclaim our freedom? First, we must become aware of our conditioning. We must question every belief, every assumption, every identity we've inherited. Who told you what success means? Who told you what love looks like? Who told you who you are? And why did you believe them? This questioning is not meant to destroy, it's meant to reveal. Because beneath the layers of programming, there is something pure, your essence, your spirit, your wild, untamed truth. That is where freedom lives, not in rebellion for the sake of rebellion, but in the quiet, grounded, sovereign knowing of who you are. And once you begin to live from that place, everything changes. You stop needing approval. You stop fearing rejection. You stop obsessing over outcomes. You become dangerous not because you seek power over others, but because you cannot be controlled. You are no longer a product of the system. You become a creator of your own reality. Fromm believed that love was the ultimate expression of freedom. But not the love we see portrayed in movies or on screens. Not the clinging, needy, possessive love that comes from fear. He meant real love, mature love. The kind that says, I see you. I don't need to own you. I want your freedom as much as I want my own. That love can only exist between free beings. And that's why so many relationships are prisons, because they are built on dependence, not freedom. So ask yourself, do you love from freedom or from fear? Do you give because you choose to, or because you're afraid of being alone? Do you speak your truth, or do you censor yourself to keep the peace? These are not surface-level questions. These are the questions that cut to the root of who you are, and the answers may shake your world. They may show you that some of your relationships are built on illusion, that some of your dreams were never really yours, that some of your values are just inherited scripts. But don't run. Stay with it, because in that collapse, something new is born. Something real. You begin to live not as a reaction to the world, but as a presence within it. You stop chasing. You start creating. You stop seeking. You start being. And from that being, your actions become aligned. Your voice becomes authentic. Your life becomes a reflection of your soul, not your fears. This is the revolution Fromm was calling for. Not a political one, but a psychological one. A revolution of consciousness. A radical return to the self, not the ego self, but the authentic self. The self that cannot be commodified, categorized, or controlled. And once you touch that self, you realize freedom was never out there. It was always within, waiting, whispering, calling you home. So let me ask you the only question that matters now. What are you still clinging to that is keeping you from being free? Freedom is not a destination you arrive at once, and for all it's a moment-by-moment decision to live in truth, no matter the cost. And that's the cost we rarely speak of, because freedom is not cheap. It demands everything false to fall away. Erich Fromm knew this. He knew that the psychological trap we live in is so intricately woven into our lives that tearing it down doesn't just change us, it dismantles the very world we've built around ourselves. Fromm taught us that the modern world is structured to pull us away from our essence. The more society advances materially, the more we tend to regress spiritually and psychologically. We've created a world that is efficient, productive, and connected, but one that leaves the individual feeling more anxious, lonely, and fragmented than ever. Why? Because we've externalized everything. We've lost the inner compass. Instead of asking, what kind of person do I want to be? We ask, how do I appear? Instead of choosing values, we replicate trends. Instead of seeking meaning, we collect distractions. This is what Fromm called the marketing orientation of the self. He observed that people in modern capitalist societies begin to treat themselves as commodities. You no longer live according to who you are, you live according to how you can be sold. Your image becomes your currency. You become a brand, a product, something to be optimized, packaged, improved. And in the process, your authentic self begins to disappear. You become a mask chasing validation that never lasts. Can you feel that? That subtle, painful disconnection from your soul. That moment where you scroll through your feed and wonder, am I even real anymore? That's the trap. Not because technology is evil or capitalism is inherently wrong, but because we've allowed them to dictate our identity. We've allowed the system to answer the question, who should I be? And as long as we let that happen, we are not free. Fromm believed real freedom begins when we reclaim our identity not from rebellion, but from intention. Not by opposing the world, but by returning to the self. He wrote, man's main task in life is to give birth to himself. That is the sacred work. To become who you are, not who you were told to be. To discover not just what you want, but why you want it. To ask, again and again, is this mine or was this given to me? But to be born again into yourself, you must let the old self die. The performing self, the obedient self, the self that was shaped more by fear than by love. And death is painful. That's why most people stop here. They reach the edge of the cliff, they look into the unknown, and they turn back. But you are not most people. You are still listening. You are still here. And that means something inside you is ready. It's ready to say no. No to the lies. No to the roles. No to the voices that told you your worth was conditional. No to the inner critic that was never truly yours. This is not defiance for its own sake. This is sacred rebellion. The kind that liberates not just you, but everyone bound by the same illusions. So what does life look like on the other side of the trap? It looks quieter at first. There's less noise, but more meaning. There's less applause, but more peace. You begin to do things not for results, but for resonance. You speak not to impress, but to connect. You create not to be seen, but to express something true. You begin to live not as a reflection of others' desires, but as a manifestation of your own soul. And from that place, you begin to love differently. Fromm's greatest insight about freedom was that it is not isolation, it is connection. But not connection built on fear or dependency. Connection built on presence, or on seeing and being seen without distortion. On loving others, not as objects to fulfill your needs, but as beings to walk beside in mutual freedom. He wrote, love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence. But not the love we've been sold, not the love that clings or consumes, Real love, the kind that arises when two free souls meet without trying to possess each other. That kind of love can only grow in the soil of freedom. And that's why inner freedom is not selfish. It is the foundation of every real relationship, every real act of service, every real contribution to the world. When you are free inside, you stop needing to dominate others. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop needing to win. You become a channel for truth, for kindness, for creation. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop asking, what do they want from me? And start asking, what is mine to give? And this is what changes the world, not revolutions of violence, but revolutions of consciousness. People waking up, people remembering, people choosing presence over performance, soul over system, truth over comfort. That is the real revolution, and it begins with one person, you. So now you must ask yourself, what would it mean, in the deepest sense, to be free? Not free to do whatever you want, but free to become who you truly are. Free from the fear of rejection. Free from the compulsion to impress. Free from the need to escape your own mind. Free to sit in silence and hear the voice beneath the noise. Free to live a life so real, so aligned, so grounded in truth, that nothing outside of you can shake it. That's what Fromm was pointing us toward, not a life of rebellion, but a life of responsibility. A life where you no longer wait for permission. A life where your worth is not up for negotiation. A life where you look in the mirror and see someone whole. The trap was never a cage you could see. It was the belief that you weren't already enough. It was the voice that said, be more, do more, hide more. But that voice is not your truth. It was installed, it was inherited, and it can be removed. You are already enough. You are already free. But only if you choose to be. And that choice must be made every day, in every action, in every word, in every breath. So now the final question, will you choose to live as a product of the world or as the creator of your own soul? You already know the answer.